Hey folks, today I've got a trailer of lumber. I've got my old truck, and I've got some peace and quiet out here in the field on my friend's land. One of the things I'm going to be doing today is building 3 different benches. 2 of them are made by 2x6 by 8 foot pressure treated lumber, and then the third one's made with a 2x8 lumber. So essentially they're the same design, but just different dimensions that are used. Since we've got off-grid land here, there's no electricity, so I'm going to be running my generator. I'm going to turn the sound down so you don't have to be subject to the sound of the generator while I'm sawing and cutting. I'll just do a voiceover for that. For the benches, there's 4 pieces of 8 foot lumber each. The 2x6s have 4 2x6 by 8 foot pressure treated lumber, and then the 2x8, same design, just a little bit different dimensions, is 4 also of the 2x8 by 8 foot. Try to pick the best lumber you can. Try not to get heartwood that's got the core in the center. Get it so it's got a little bit of the full grain cupped on one side. That'll let you have the most strength in that lumber. If you get the core, then where you put your screws into the wood, it can split. Some of the tools we'll be using today are a skill saw, a pencil or pen. I prefer pen because it gives me more accurate cut lines. A tape measure, a speed square, a screw gun, and then 2.5 inch framing screws and 3 inch framing screws or deck screws. Use exterior grade. The framing screws are thicker in diameter, and so they'll withstand weight better for our side legs. You'll see when we put those on what I'm talking about. And then the seats and the seat back are held in place with the 3 inch. And those don't have to be as thick, but they do need the length for the hold down power. I want to thank Rogue Engineer for the plans on these. These are known as a Leopold bench. Although Leopold made them for birding and photography of wildlife. So it's a very easy design, very easy to build, minimal skills needed, no intricate cuts. You do need to pay attention to what you're doing, but I've already built one for my home. I'm going to build another. I've got the 3 I'm building here today, and a dear friend of mine has also built one. She had no problems with it at all. All right, let's get started. All right, from our cut sheet, we know that we need to start out by cutting a 4 foot length off of each of these 4 2x6s. Those are going to be our seats and backs. We're going to pick lumber that's got pretty clear ends with no knots on the very end. It can be a few inches in, that's fine, but we're going to be putting screws on the very ends, so we don't want a knot on the end. If you do, you might pick the other end of the lumber. So 48 inches. We're just going to make a mark on each board. Then we're going to use our speed square to extend that line. All right, so we've got 4 pieces and 4 foot. I'm going to pull these down to the ground to cut, because if you try to do it up in the air, you're going to wind up pinching the blade on your saw. So I'm going to do this on the ground, and then we're going to mark the rest of our cuts. So these are the initial ones we're going to be doing. I'm going to turn the sound down because I've got to turn on the generator so I've got power for my saw. All right, now we've got our 4 pieces for the seat on the bench and the back. The rest of this lumber is going to be used to cut the legs. So we've got a shorter leg that goes from the front up to the back a little bit, and then a longer, you know what, I'm wrong. That short one goes from the front top down to the back, and then a longer leg goes from the front bottom up to the top back. Look at the pictures. Anyway, we're going to be cutting these lumber to the dimensions shown. We're going to start out with a 20-degree cut. But these are going to be the 2 that get the longer legs. So they're going to have a 20-degree cut on one end. So we're going to go ahead and measure that with a speed square. All right, so we're going to pick our first leg. This is going to be the first long leg. It's got a 20-degree angle. It's cut here. So we're going to use our pivot point. We've got this corner here that's marked pivot with an arrow, so we put that on the corner. And then there's numbers that are degrees here. It goes from 0 to 90 degrees. So we've got a 20-degree mark. We're going to spin this down on that pivot point. So 20 degrees is on the edge of where that lumber's at. So we're going to use our pin. We're going to mark that with a nice, easy to see mark. That's 20 degrees on this side and 70 degrees on this side. We're going to cut off that 20-degree section there. We're going to do this on 2 boards. All right, pivot, 20 degrees up, mark, and then cut. Alright, from our sharp end here, we're going to mark 38.5 inches. And again, on the other board, from the point, 38.5 inches. So 35 degrees from this point out to the end of the board. This is going to be our leg that holds the back. Our point, 35 degrees, 30, 35. Let's make sure our point is pivoting right. So 35 to the edge, and we make our mark for our cut. Okay, guys, we're not through with this board yet. So a lot of people are tempted to turn off their generator and put their saw away once they've made that cut. Not yet. We still have another cut to make on this set of boards. So on our 20-degree side, we're going to measure 1.5 inches. Well, 1.5 inches happens to be what a 2x4 board is. So we're just going to use that as our marking point. So we've got our point and then 20 degrees in. So at the top of that 20 degree is where we're going to mark right there. That's our 1.5 inches from there. So we're going to mark down from this point 12 3/4 inches. 12 3/4. We're going to use a straight edge, and I'm going to use another board because that's what I've got. We're going to use this board. We're going to connect those 2 lines. And make our mark. We're going to do the same on the board underneath. So, 1.5 inches in from this 20-degree side. All right, 12 3/4. And then a straight line between the two. All right, so I'm going to make these 2 cuts, and we'll be done with these 2 boards for now. And then we'll start on the short legs. All right, these 2 I'm going to set aside for a few minutes. We're going to work on these 2 now. Yeah, one of these was ugly on both ends. We got knots on both ends. So the good thing is that on that board, we don't have to use those ugly parts. We're going to have a lot of left over. So I can come in several inches and skip that completely. I can skip it from here. Let's do it from here. Swing this down to 40 degrees, 30, 35, and 40 to the edge of the wood right there, 40 degrees. Then on this board looks good, so we're going to use it from the corner. We're going to go 40 degrees on this one also. We're going to make these cuts. And then we're going to cut the, we're going to measure and then make our next cut. From this point, 19 3/8 inches out here. 19 3/8. 1, 2, 3. It's not quite 19 1/2. It's just 1 under the 19 4/8. We're going to make the same mark out here. Notice I marked these 40 degrees because the other side is going to be 45 degrees. And it just makes it quicker and easier to see which end goes where. One end goes on the ground, one end goes in the air. And I'll show you which in a moment. So 19 3/8. 1, 2, 3. Then we're going to mark 45 degrees. The good thing about 45 degrees is that we don't have to spin our speed square. We just get it to the corner. That's already a 45 degree angle. Mark our line and make our cut. So let's mark the other one. So that puts that knot on this side of the line. So we've got a good looking board there. All right, we've got 2 more pieces to cut. These are little brace pieces, little bitty pieces, 3.5 inches by 3.5 inches by 45 degree angle. We can use some of our scrap, which I prefer to use scrap. All right, guys, we are done with the skill saw for this particular bench. I've still got 2 more benches to build, but this first bench, we're done with the skill saw. So these little pieces, triangular pieces, we're just going to pick a spot that's pretty close to the center and pre-drill our hole in each of these. All right, so I want to show you the difference between these 2. This one is liable to split because our grain is very close to the line that we're about to be drilling, and that's one reason why we do pre-drill some screw holes. so that we don't split that wood. So now we just need to grab our screws and start assembly. All right, guys, we're taking our scrap. I've got a piece of scrap here, and I'm going to mark 23 inches. That's going to be the distance between the back of the back leg and the front of the front leg. It's not rocket science, but it needs to be pretty close. So I'm just making a couple lines here. We could use our speed square and just make a big line. That'll make it easy to do. All right, so another thing that we've got is on our short legs, we've got a 40-degree end and a 45-degree end. Our 40-degree end is going to be on the ground. So I'm going to set this up. We're going to take our leg here. So this one that we cut the long length off of, that's going to be your backs. So it's going to be the outside edge. So we're going to set it there. We want it tight against this. This is going to represent the ground. So we've got a piece of scrap here we're going to use just to hold that up. So there's our lines. We're going to line this up, 40-degree end, there, on that mark that we made at 23 inches. That way from here to here is 23 inches. Let's go ahead and get our screw gun. We're going to put 4 2.5-inch screws here, 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 and here. It's not really critical exactly where they go, but 4 of them. And that's why I use the framing screws. These are stronger than deck screws. They're thicker, and so they're going to give you more support for more weight on those. And you can also use lag bolts. Get little 3.5-inch lag bolts, and maybe just put 2 of them. You're going to have a little wobble to it, so you could do 4. It might be overkill, but it's going to last. In fact, those bolts will last. The hinge will last longer than the wood. Something else you might do is go ahead and pre-put these in. Don't drive them. Don't send them home until you're ready. So I'm just going to get them started so we know they're in the right place. Again, it's not critical, but just kind of evenly spaced, not too close to the edges. So we're just getting them started. We're going to double check our links here, make sure the distance apart is the same, and then we're going to go ahead and send the top one home. And the bottom one. Double check everything again, and okay, so we've got one side done. What I like to do to make this easier to look at, or not to look at, easier to figure out, is I set these on top of each other. And I'm going to pull away the one underneath. So that's the way it's going to look. So we've got outside edge, seat support, outside edge. This is just a miniature seat sitting here. So let's go ahead and leave these the way they are. It just helps my brain see what's going on. All right, we got 23 inches here. This one on the end, we're going to put a piece of blocking under there to just hold it, support it a little bit. That flat against that edge, this flat against that edge. Pre-drill some of these in, and then send them home. All right. Again, we're using 2.5-inch screws here. That way the point doesn't come through the other side and rip someone's pants. Or rip a leg open or something like that. All right. flat against here. Let's send the top one home. Bottom. All right. We don't need that scrap anymore, but we do need these scraps. These are the two that we pre-drilled. We're also going to use 2.5-inch screws on these. Here's the other one. All right, so we're going to use these. These give extra support for our seat deck. So actually I might wind up using this like that just so I know exactly where it's going to give us the best support. That way we can line our seats up, and I'll show you that in just a moment. Let's put our support on this other one real quick. Now we're done with that scrap. All right. Guess what it's time to do now? We're going to put our seat on. So we're going to start out with just one end. I'm going to use this other end just to hold it up in the right area. We're going to pick our first board that's going to be the front. You want to pick a board that really doesn't have any blemishes on the front. Otherwise you may need to sand it down. Just going to set that there anywhere. This one we're going to get close to the very front edge. And then that's just going to support. It's not going to really do anything right now. Just supporting it. And we're going to only put one screw in this other side. That way if we need to pivot, we can. And you know, when it falls down like that, I'm not going to worry about it. We're just going to adjust this down a little bit. So we're pretty close to the right angle that we need to be at. And we're going to put one screw in at the back. Going to make our back end flush. Going to come in about 1.5 inches. Center it on that board. All right, now we're going to put the other side on. Again, we're going to line up the front with the front, and then the side with the side. And we'll send one home like that. All right. So the front has a very short edge here. If we put that straight down, we're going to have a whole lot of screw coming down. So we're going to put this in at an angle. We're going to bring this in at an angle. Again, this is a 3-inch screw. So I'm going to get it started here and then pull it in. We're going to do the same on the other side. Our other seat bottom. It's going to be this one. So Another something we want to do is give a little bit of space between these two boards. You can use anything. You can use a pin. That'll work. Right there. It gives us a little airspace. So again, 2 screws in each one. What I like to do on the backs is to mark where my range is that I'm going to be drilling into. So I'm going to line this up here. I'm going to make a mark, and that way I know where my drill spots are. I'm going to pre-drill these, not with holes, but just with the screws. So we know our top one's going to be even with the top of that board there. We're going to mark where the bottom of that board is, and so this top board is going to get 3 screws. Again, we're using 3-inch. I'm using framing screws on these because these are holding the strength of our, or the weight of our back. I'm just putting them in place. That way we know that it's going to be easy to do. And we're going to do the same on the back side. So sometimes you might need a little gentle persuasion. You can stretch it out to be where you want it to be. I like to put the top one in first. That way I can line the back up with this back line and the top with the edge here. And then we're going to do the other side, that way it's supported. Let me send the other side. I'm just going to go ahead and set that there. Again, we're going to pick the side that's got the nicest look to it. Yeah, probably that side there. We're also looking at the crowning of the board. So if we're going to have our weight of our backs on it, we want our that to be against the crown of the wood. Again, our pencil here. Put our top screw in. Pull our pencil out, if we can. That's funny. That's funny, Rex. There we go. line up our back. And last one on this side, and it's lined up also. Perfect. One question people ask me is this thing solid? Is it going to fall backwards? And I'm going to tell you, I'm leaning back pretty far here, and the answer is no. It's not going to just tip over. If you're tipping it over, you're doing something on this bench you probably shouldn't ought to be doing. All right, let's get this over by the fire pit. And I've got 2 more to build. Thanks, guys. As a side note, although Leopold designed this bench so that you could use it for wildlife watching, birding, it gives you a support. Sit here with your camera or your binoculars and watch the wildlife. So you can use it forwards or backwards. Oh.